If you're a private citizen, I hope that you have thought about whether or not you would help an officer in need. The Mantis X firearms training system attaches to any gun with a rail and to your phone via Bluetooth to track barrel movement every shot you take. Use it to help you be the most accurate, fastest shot you possibly can in a defensive encounter. I use it in my training all the time. Hi everyone, this is John with today's active self-protection lesson out of Michigan. Here we're going to see one of the craziest officer-involved incidents that I have ever seen, and it's going to teach us important lessons about getting involved in an officer-involved incident, about the difficulty of a backup gun, and why I say that they're not always the most useful thing, and about the importance of empty-handed skills in our self-defense. So this officer has tried to pull this guy over who was speeding on this motorcycle that ended up being stolen. And if you go read the news stories, which you totally should, this guy ended up being a whole piece of work in and of himself, but he wrecks the bike there. So now the officer gets out because he's taking him on a high-speed chase, gets out initially felony stop. You're going to see here that as the guy stumbled towards him, the officer has his gun in his hand. Now he tries to put it away, but if you're paying attention there, the gun fell on the ground. And now this officer is in a fight with this guy. Now, this car coming by actually threw a bottle at the officer because it is the perp's half-brother in the car. And he's just going to come over here and whack this officer a good one and get him in a rear naked choke. Now, this officer's fighting for his life. The initial perp now has kind of headed off for a second, but he's going to come back with his brother, has the officer in a chokehold. This guy's tried to get the officer's gun, but thankfully it wasn't in the holster. Now we see some good Samaritans actually show up, and the first one gets the second perp who had the officer in a headlock in one of his own, and the second one here is going to grab a hold of that guy as well. So now our two good Samaritans are on the brother, and our officer here is going to get a hold of our perp. And now you notice there he tried there to get his gun real quick, but he doesn't have the gun. The gun's in the grass a ways from him. So now he's going to have to get this guy down and get him in cuffs. And you just imagine how much stress this officer's under. He said in the news story in the description that he was almost out, that he had almost lost consciousness from the choke that this guy had him in. And now the officer's going to get his taser out, give that guy a little bit of the electric boogaloo to try to get him into custody. He's finally going to get this guy into custody while the other two guys just off camera have the brother, and they're still wrestling with that guy. And thankfully, they're going to be able to get everybody into custody here. Again, in the news story, the original perp here, the officer's going to put him in the back of the car. The guy's going to actually get out of the cuffs that he's in right here and get out of the patrol car even, and they're going to have to catch him another time. It's just like Keystone Cops here. Thankfully, the officer gets his gun, and this one ends right here. Few lessons for all of us out of this one. First of all, as the officer comes in here, this guy's wrecked his bike. Again, the officer comes out felony stop because the guy's run from him. And now as he comes back, you notice here that the officer's trying to put his gun away. Now, I do say for non-sworn that I really think that you should look your gun into the holster all the time. But this right here is why we always say that law enforcement officers need to be able to put their firearm away without looking because of situations like this. That's a law enforcement thing only. Open carry, duty holster, got to be able to put it away. Next, of course, is ground skills and the ability to not get so enmeshed in what's going on around you that you forget to see. You notice here the officer's looking over his right shoulder, seeing what the heck's going on where that bottle came from. But now he's going to really focus on this guy to the exclusion of everything else. He said he never saw this other guy coming because he was so engaged with the first perp. So the first thing he saw was this guy had him around the neck. Very dangerous here. Next, of course, you really got to have the skills, everyone, to fight on the ground. And, whether you call that jiu-jitsu or whatever, I don't care. You got to have the ability to fight somebody off who's got you by the neck. You got to have the ability to try to get up in that moment. And that takes training, and empty-handed skills are the foundation of every self-defender's self-defense. Now, as he's going back here, one of the things that I want to notice is he said in this moment that he wanted to go for his backup gun because he knew his primary was gone, but it was on his ankle and he couldn't get it. Thinking about your ability, if you carry a backup gun, where it would be and if you could use it is incredibly important. Now, what we're going to see here is our first Good Samaritan comes up. And of course, I want to talk about Good Samaritans here, friends. And number one, could he have shot these guys if they had, if he'd come up and he had a gun? And the answer to that is almost certainly yes. The officer was in a chokehold. The officer was in danger of his life. He could have defended that officer's life, no problem. But of course, coming up, identifying yourself to the officer, I'm here to help you, is always incredibly wise because that will keep you from having problems. And then we see the next guy come up here, and I do want to ask about being a good Samaritan. Plenty of cars drove by. We saw all kinds of cars drive by. and a bunch of people didn't stop. But these two guys did, and thank God they did, because they were willing to step in and help these officers. This officer, his life was saved that day. So I think every self-defender needs to ask themselves a question: who am I willing to step in and help? Thankfully, these guys were willing to step in and help the officer, and they had the skills in order to subdue this guy who wanted to do them harm. Now, the officer here is still fighting, friends. And, we do need to talk about physical fitness, because if you're involved in a significant fight, man, it'll gas you like you would not believe. And you got to have enough in the gas tank, more than the other guy has in his tank. And you know what? You don't know how much that's going to be, so having as much as you can is definitely wise. Now, finally, as they keep having this fight, I want to notice again that the officer did not have his gun on him at this point. He had his backup on him if he needed it, but not his primary. So he notices that and he goes back to get it. That's good mindset, good understanding of what's going on. All things considered, I think this officer did as well as he could in a very bad situation. Thank God for the bystanders. Friends, let's learn some lessons, each one of us from our place, so that we can cover our asp.